Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Udapatakamanam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sargana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sargana Lalita Shivashakam Vitam Sya Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpati Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabano Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhesha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Budale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prajarine Nirvishesha Chunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurue Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namo Hare Krishna Hare Om Tat Sat. So we are reading from Mukundamala Stotra by Kulashekar Alvar. Sloka number 4, right? Okay. So I'll just read the translation before we proceed with the purport. O Lord Hari is not to be saved from the dualities of material existence or the grim tribulations of the Kumbhipaka hell that I pray to your lotus feet, nor is my purpose to enjoy the soft-skinned, beautiful women reside in the gardens of heaven. I pray to your lotus feet only so that I may remember you alone in the core of my heart, birth after birth. So we have read the translation. So from here, right, the spiritual master in the authoritative line. Okay. Hare Krishna, Prince Prabhu.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam.
Prabhuji, we are reading
Yes.
sloka number 4, right?
Yes, Prabhuji. The spiritual master is the authoritative line.
Okay, very good.
So Hare Krishna.
Spiritual master in the authoritative line of disciple succession is a son of God, or in other words, the Lord is Lord's bona fide representative. The proof that he is bona fide is his invincible faith in God, which protects him from the calamity of impulsivism. So calamity of impulsivism, I think we have explained last time also. Prabhupada says, even Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj says, impersonalism is calamity. Why? Because the Supreme Lord, who has a beautiful Shyama Sundara Tribhanga Lalita form, that Supreme Lord has no form. The impersonalists believe that that Supreme Lord has no form. Such a beautiful, very attractive. The name Krishna itself is all attractive. That Supreme Lord doesn't have a form. He has a form, it's a spiritual form. So the Jnana is the impersonalist thing that the the Supreme Lord has no form. Nirakara, Nirvishesha, Nirguna. Yeah, this is one of the aspects. But Supreme Lord has spiritual form. When we get purified, when we have the eligibility to see him face to face, we'll be able to see him, that beautiful form of Tribhanga Lalita, form of Supreme Lord. Okay, his form's beauty has been very nicely elaborated in Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures. How can we say that he doesn't have a form? Okay, so the spiritual master is the representative of that Supreme Lord who introduces the Supreme Lord to us, because we don't have the knowledge and we don't have the purified senses to perceive him. So it is spiritual master who teaches us about the existence of the Supreme Lord his personal form, his attributes, and other things. Okay. So here it says, calamity of impersonalism. It's a calamity. Really, it's a calamity if we think that the Lord has no form. An impersonalist cannot be a bona fide spiritual master. For such a spiritual master's only purpose in life must be to render service to the Lord. So Prabhupada very clearly says, we should not accept anybody from that line of impersonalism. Our spiritual master, we should not accept. That's a calamity. That's as good as committing spiritual suicide. Okay, that's why it is said calamity. Calamity means our death. We don't know. When natural calamities comes, what happens to us? We don't know. Tsunami, earthquake, hurricane, flood, all this comes. There is no guarantee that we will live. So similarly, so spiritually speaking, if you don't accept the spiritual form of the Supreme Lord, it's as good as committing suicide. So we should never accept an impersonalist as our spiritual master. Okay, that's what Prabhupada says. He's warning us. Okay, he preaches the message of Godhead as the Lord's appointed agent and has nothing to do with sense gratification or the mundane triangling of the impersonalist. No one can render devotional service to an impersonal entity because such service implies a reciprocal personal relation between the servant and the master. So we cannot serve the Supreme Lord if he has no form. How to serve the Supreme Lord? There are different kinds of service that we can render to the Supreme Lord in 5 different mellows: Dasya, Sakhya, Vasalya, Madhurya, and the beginning, of course, that is Shanta. So how can we do if he has no form? How can we dress the Supreme Lord in his Archa Vigraha? We cannot. So if the Supreme Lord is abstract light, void, how can we do service? Now, suppose in our material relationship also, the husband and wife, wife says the husband has no form, or the husband says wife has no form. how can you do seva? Okay, just imagine there is a form. Everything is void. You cannot serve. So definitely we have a form. How is that the Lord doesn't have a form? So we are limiting the Supreme Lord. We have a form, and God should not have a form. That means we are limiting him, isn't it? Impersonalists say that you are limiting the Supreme Lord, who is the proprietor of the whole manifestation, to a form. So for that, what reply we should give? Say seed of a banyan tree. How big is it? The whole potency, the whole banyan tree is there in that seed. Then it's a matter of time. It sprouts, it becomes a plant, then becomes a tree, and it becomes a gigantic tree. Isn't it? The whole potency of the gigantic tree is there in the small seed. So similarly, the Lord has a transcendental form, and from that form, he manifests this gigantic material and spiritual creation. So that they don't try to understand. So they treat the Lord as no form. So if Lord has no form, we also should not have a form. So we are having something which Lord doesn't have. I mean, then who is superior? I have something that Lord doesn't have. So I become superior, isn't it? So that's not the case. So that's a misconception of the impersonalist. So no one can render devotional service to an impersonal entity because such service implies a reciprocal personal relationship between the servant and the master. So there is a master, there is a servant. Servant serves the master. If you want to serve, there should be a person. We cannot serve to avoid abstract light. We cannot serve. So it's a relationship between servant and master. In the impersonal school, the so-called devotee is supposed to merge with the Lord and lose his separate existence. So this is their philosophy. In the impersonal school, the devotee thinks that once liberated, he will merge in the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Lord. So impersonal Brahman is the effulgence that is emanated from the body of the Supreme Lord. So in the Isopanishad also, Hiranmayena Patrena, okay, it's covered by the effulgence. Please remove it so that I'll be able to see your spiritual form. In the Isopanishad it said, right? Okay, because of the effulgence that's covering the personal form of the Supreme Lord, I cannot see it. So requesting the Supreme Lord to please remove that covering, that veil, so that I can see him, I can see you face to face. Okay. In the impersonal school, the so-called devotee is supposed to merge with the Lord and lose his separate existence. Pure devotees like King Kulashekara are particularly careful to avoid a process that will end in their becoming one with the existence of the Lord, a state known as Advanta, non-duality. This is simply spiritual suicide. Okay, so devotees like Kulashekara Alvar, Kulashekara Alvar is a Vaishnava. So Vaishnava doesn't approve this philosophy, this Siddhanta, this Tattva. Yeah, losing our identity and thinking that we will merge in the effulgence of the Supreme. Okay, Vaishnava doesn't support this. And if at all we lose our identity, we may lose it for some time, but then we'll have to come back. Okay, it's not a permanent. We may merge or we may lose our identity for some time. It's not for eternity. So that is what Prabhupada says here very clearly. This is simply spiritual suicide. It's not material. Our Atma is losing the individuality. It's a suicide. Out of the 5 kinds of salvation, Advanta is the most abominable for a devotee. Pure devotee denounces such oneness with the Lord as worse than going to hell. So as far as the devotee is concerned, merging in the Supreme Lord's effulgence is as good as, not as good as, worse than going to hell. It's worse than going to hell is still okay. It is worse than going to hell. So as his separated expansion, the living beings are part and parcel of the Lord. The Lord expands himself into plenary parts and separated parts to enjoy transcendental pastimes. And if a living being refuses to engage in these transcendental blissful pastimes, he is at liberty to merge into the absolute. So there is a provision also. If the person doesn't want to have a personal relationship, he can decide for the merger. But that's, it's a spiritual suicide. But then it's not for eternity. After some time, the living entity develops some desire. Then he'll have to come back again to this material world. So in Srimad Bhagavatam also, it's very clearly mentioned in the 11th canto, I think, 11th canto. 10th canto, 11th canto, I don't know, but anyway. So those who merge into the supreme effulgence, the Lord's effulgence, after some time, they develop a desire to enjoy, to be active. Okay. When you merge, you are not active, but at some point of time, you will develop a desire to be active. When you develop that desire, then you'll have to come back again to this material world. Patanti, it is mentioned in that sloka. Patanti means you fall down again to this material world. Then, by the mercy of Lord or by the compassion of this devotees, you develop the personal, you develop a taste in the personal form of the Supreme Lord. Then you attain the spiritual abode, where you can serve the Supreme Lord as a person. So that's why we say that it's a spiritual suicide. And if at all you go to the spirit effulgence or merge yourself, lose your identity, it is temporary, you again fall down. Okay, this is something like a son committing suicide instead of living with his father according to the rules of the father sets them. Prabhupada is giving an example that it's just, a son is committing a suicide instead of living with the father according to the rules of the father sets down. By committing suicide, the son thus sacrifices the happiness he could have enjoyed by engaging in a filial loving relationship with his father and enjoying his father's estate. It's a very good example Prabhupada gives. If the son commits suicide, how can he enjoy the father's property? How can he enjoy the reciprocal relationship with the father? So similarly, if we also merge into the Supreme Lord's effulgence, we are losing a golden opportunity to serve the Supreme Lord, whereby we'll become so much blissful. The pure devotee persistently avoids such a criminal policy, and King Kulashekara is guiding us to avoid this pitfall. So Kulashekara Alvar is warning us that don't try to commit spiritual suicide, rather try to be a personalist and try to serve the Supreme Lord in his abode. The king also says that the reason he is praying to the Lord is not to be saved from the Kumbhipaka hell. Laborers in gigantic iron and steel mills suffer tribulations similar to those in the Kumbhipaka hell. Kumbhi means pot, Paka means boiling. So what is the punishment given there? Boiling. The oil is there in the pot, it's boiling. And the sinful living beings are put in that boiling oil and fried, deep fried. Okay.
65, bro.
so this is the, now we are all laughing now. Only that's why, because we don't know what's that. Only when we go through that suffering that we'll know the severity of that. So this is Kumbhipaka hell. Okay. Kumbhi means pot and Paka means boiling. So if a person were put into a pot of oil and the pot were set to boiling, he would have some idea of suffering in Kumbhipaka hell. So here, King Kulashekara is not asking, please relieve me from this hellish condition. Please, arrange for me beautiful women. No, I am not asking all these things. No problem. According to my karma, whatever I have to suffer, I will suffer. No problem. I am not asking to save me from all these, calamities. I am simply requesting you, birth after birth, let me be your sincere servant. Please do not steal from me this yogyada, this eligibility. I want to serve you birth after birth. So this is what Kulashekara Alvar is asking. There are innumerable hellish engagements in the modern so-called civilization, and by the grace of the Lord's illusory energy, people think these hellish engagements are a great fortune. So if we are in place of Kulashekara, what we will ask, oh my Lord, please save us from this hellish condition. This will be our prayers. And please give me all comforts that is possible, that is there under this sun. All comforts possible. Isn't it? This will be our prayers. But Kulashekara Alvar is not praying that. He wants to serve the Supreme Lord in whatever condition, in whichever situation he is in. No problem if he's put in the hellish planet, but he wants to serve the Supreme Lord. So this is a difference between an ordinary devotee and a pure devotee. You're all practicing devotee, ordinary devotee, but Kulashekara Alvar is a pure devotee. Kunti Devi is a pure devotee. That's why she's asking, let the calamities befall again and again on me, so that I'll be able to have your darshan. And having your darshan means, there's no birth and death again. So this is their prayers. But we cannot pray like that. We have not reached that platform. But at least we can follow in the footsteps, to be eligible to pray like that at some point of time when we become pure. So modern industrial factories fully equipped with the up-to-date machines are so many Kumbhipaka hells, and the organizers of these enterprises regard them as indispensable for the advancement of economic welfare. So Prabhupada is comparing the modern factories. It is as good as the hells, Kumbhipaka hells. Now, of course, because of the modernization, even the factories now it's air conditioned, but still, if you see the workers working in that hot summer in the building at section site, and all, it's really hellish, isn't it? Some places still a lot to improve. So much improvement has taken place because of modernization. Comfort is there, but not in all areas. Some factories, some workers, they have to undergo a lot of tribulation, lot of toil. That's what Prabhupada is telling us. So the mass of laborers exploited by the organizers directly experience the welfare condition in these factories. But what the organizers do not know is that by the laws of karma, they will in due time become laborers in similar Kumbhipaka. So those who are engaging the laborers in such factories, okay, the proprietors, the owners, the masters, they don't know that in due course of time, they too will have to undergo such hellish conditions when they are promoted. I should say promoted to the hellish condition instead of demoted. Okay. So even they will have to undergo the same situation. Because they are engaging the workers, the poor workers in such hellish condition. So for that sinful activities, they themselves will have to undergo in the hellish conditions. That's what Prabhupada says. Intelligent persons certainly want to be saved from such Kumbhipaka hells, and they pray to God for this benediction. But a pure devotee does not pray in this way. Intelligent persons certainly want to be saved from such Kumbhipaka hells, and they pray to God for this benediction, like all of us. But a pure devotee does not pray in this way. A pure devotee of Narayana looks equally upon the happiness enjoyed in heaven, the transcendent bliss of becoming one with the Lord, and the tribulations experienced in the Kumbhipaka hell. So, just like, a pure devotee sees in equanimity everything, the duality of this material world. What is the duality? Happiness, distress, victory, failure, good, bad. In all situations, he maintains equanimity. He is equipoised. That's what the devotee. So devotee is not perturbed by the duality of the material world. Okay. So that's why, whether it is heaven, hell, or whatever it is, they are neutral. They maintain neutrality. He is not concerned with any of them because he is always engaged in the trans-loving service of the Lord. By the grace of the Lord, even in the Kumbhipaka hell, the pure devotee can adjust the situation and turn it into Vaikuntha. So pure devotees will even turn the situation of the hells into a Vaikuntha. Bhagavad Gita and all other revealed scriptures say that the Lord accompanies every living being in its localized aspect of Paramatma, the Super Soul. Therefore, even a living being destined to reside in the Kumbhipaka hell is accompanied by his eternal companion, the Lord. So as we all know, the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is dwelling in the heart of every living entity, be they human, animal, birds, aquatics, and worms, trees. The Paramatma is there. Paramatma accompanies each and every living entity in their where? In the heart. Right? As companion. But by his inconceivable power, the Lord remains aloof from these hellish circumstances, just as the sky remains separate from the air, although seemingly mixed with it. Similarly, the pure devotee of the Lord does not live anywhere in this material world, although he appears to live among mundane creatures. Actually, the devotee lives in Vaikuntha. In this way, the Supreme Lord bestows upon his pure devotee the inconceivable power that allows him to stay aloof from all mundane circumstances and reside eternally in the spiritual. So, whether the devotee is in the hell or in any other part of the material world or spiritual world, he is always situated in the spiritual world because he is always relating himself and he is always serving the Supreme Lord. So, whenever there is a pure, loving exchange between the servant and the master, that plane is spiritual plane. So, they are not affected by the external environment at all. Always they are in the spiritual realm. As long as he has a tendency to serve the Supreme Lord unconditionally without any motivation. So he is always situated in the spiritual plane. That's what Prabhupada says here. Devotee does not want this power consciously or unconsciously. But the Lord is careful about his devotee, just as a mother is always careful about her little child. It's completely dependent on her. So the devotee may not ask for it, but the Lord, Supreme Lord, because of the sincere service that's being rendered by his devotee, he will ensure that the devotees are put in comfortable situation. He will not put his devotees in hellish condition at all. Even in the hellish condition, they will be enjoying. But the devotee is not concerned, but the Lord is concerned. The Lord will make all the arrangement so that the devotee doesn't have to undergo any turmoil. So a pure devotee like King Kulashekara refuses to associate with beautiful, soft-skinned women. There are different grades of women on different planets in the universe. Even on the earth, there are different types of women who are enjoyed by different types of men. But on higher planets, there are women many, many millions of times more beautiful than the women on this planet. And there are also many pleasure abodes where there can be enjoyed. So, the opposite sex, it's just for enjoyment. So, much better enjoyment can be had in the higher planet system, in the heavenly planets. So the beauty of the opposite sex, in comparison to this material world, in comparison to the earthly planet, in the higher heavenly planet, it's much higher. So as you go higher, the enjoyment is more, isn't it? So the women in the heavenly planets are much, beautiful than the women in the earthly planet. And more beautiful are in the Vaikuntha planet. Like that. That's what Prabhupada says here. So even Kulashekara Alvar is not after that. This is all material. And this temporary enjoyment. The best of all of this is the Nandana Gardens of Sorgaloka. So Nandana Gardens is in the Sorgaloka. It's of Indra's Loka. Okay. So that's the garden of the Sorgaloka, Indra Loka is Nandana Gardens. So in the Nandana Gardens, a garden of Eden, those who generally enjoy the company of the Apsaras, in the same way that the great Mughal kings and Nawabs enjoyed in their harems. But these kings and Nawabs are like straw before the demigods of Sargaloka. which lies in the third stratum of the universe. What is the third stratum?
So the upper planetary system.
Yes, upper planetary system. So Prabhupada is just giving a small example of the kings and nawabs of, the Mughal time. They used to enjoy with so many wives. It's said that Nawab of Hyderabad, I think he had 100 wives. But this Nawab, could he be present with each of his wife? Simultaneously, it's not possible. He cannot enjoy, isn't it? So that is just like the comparison is just like, Prabhupada says, it's just like straws before the demigods of the demigods in the Swargaloka, they had the opulence and strength to enjoy many apsaras. But here the Nawabs, they cannot. They are human beings. They don't have that strength. And that's why they are compared. The comparison is just like a straw before the demigod. Straw, we just drink something and just throw it. So that is a comparison given. So the inner tendency to enjoy in the core of every living being's heart, the tendency is there. Enjoyment is there for all. Whether you are a male or female, enjoyment tendency is there. So whoever has the enjoyment tendency, they are called Purusha. Otherwise, whether we are in a male form or a female form, we are called Prakriti. Okay. Irrespective of whether you are in a female form or a male form, we are feminine in gender. That's why we are all called as Prakriti. So when we address Prakriti, we address the Prakriti as she, not he. So in comparison to the Supreme Lord, we are Prakriti. We in the sense, whether we are in a female form or in male form, we are Prakriti. So Purusha means enjoying tendency. The only Purusha who can enjoy is the Supreme Lord. And we are not Purushas. We are not enjoyers. We are being enjoyed. We are being enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. Okay. But in the diseased state of material existence, the living being misuses that tendency. The more he increases the diseased condition state, the longer he extends his period of material existence. So Prabhupada says, diseased condition state. The more we want to enjoy this material world, enjoying in this material world is just like a diseased state. Okay? And the more we are prolonging our material existence. The Shastras advise, therefore, that a living entity should accept only those sense enjoyable objects necessary for the upkeep of the material body and reject those that are just for sense gratification. So the intelligent living entities, they should utilize that tendency, enjoying tendency, just to keep the body and soul together, not beyond that. So if you engage in unnecessary sense gratification, then our, we are prolonging this material life. We are prolonging. We don't know how long. We'll have to be here in this material world. The Shastras advise, therefore, that a living entity should accept. We read that. Okay. In this way, he will reduce the tendency for sense enjoyment. This restraint cannot. This restraint cannot be imposed by force. It must be voluntary. So one cannot force anybody, impose this on others. It should come from within. We should feel it ourselves. Yeah, this is wrong. We should not do it. We should not commit spiritual suicide. And we don't want to prolong our life in this material world. Okay? We want to put a full stop. So what should I do? How I should deal with others? How I should live? So all these things we should try to understand, and we should practice, as early as possible. Not, after 60, after 70, when we cannot see, we cannot hear, we cannot move, and the throat is choked, we cannot speak. So that time we should not give the Supreme Lord. We should start as early as possible from the Kaumaras. And only when we practice regularly, consistently, then we'll be able to remember the Supreme Lord by His mercy. So this is a practice that we have to do for a long time. The whole life we have to practice. Only then we will succeed, not at the last moment. Any student who doesn't prepare for the exam, just one previous day he is reading or something, will he be able to write the exam? No. He or she has to prepare for the exam. Just like I always say that an athlete wants to participate in the Olympic, race of 100 meters running. The whole 4 years he has to practice so that he will be able to perform very nicely in that 100 meters running race and get the gold medal. Similarly, the whole life we have to practice Krishna consciousness. We should not take this lightly. So many of us started so late, better late than never. Some children, they are very lucky to be born to devotee parents because since birth they are getting an opportunity to practice, just like our Prince Prabhu's children from the very birth itself, they are able to practice Krishna consciousness. I started late, around at the age of 40. But still, it's some sukriti or compassion of some Vaishnavas that we could at least start late. So this is such restraint automatically develops in the course of one's executing devotional service. Thus, one who is already engaged in the devotional service need not restrain his senses artificially. A pure devotee like King Kulashekara, therefore, neither desires sense enjoyment nor exerts himself to restrain his senses. Rather, he tries only to engage himself in the trance-loving service of the Lord without any stop. So instead of trying to control the senses, better try to engage the senses in devotional service. Thereby, slowly and gradually, we will be able to control the senses. So by engaging in some higher taste, the lower taste will take a backseat. So not forcefully control, slowly and gradually just make a paradigm shift. Engaging in the lower propensities and shift that into some higher propensities or higher devotional activities. So that automatically all our lower hankerings, lower inclinations will take backseat. So that's it. So any questions or any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just have a doubt here, Prabhu. Actually, I remember you telling that, but I just wanted to clarify. Like this, once the soul leaves the body, and then it's going to undergo all this, like whatever good deeds in the heaven or hell, or whatever it is. So, do we get a temporary body in between, Prabhu? Because if it is Kumbhi Bhaga, then they have to boil.
There is a Yatana Sharira. There is a temporary Yatana Sharira. Yatana Sharira means a body, that is meant for suffering. Because gross body is already left. Gross body we have left here.
Yes.
Okay? So the body that the Yamaraja gives us is a temporary Yatana Sharira to suffer the punishment. So it starts from, especially for sinners, it starts from the time we leave the body, we are tired and by the Yamadutas taken, and on the way itself, the punishment starts. The temporary Yatana Sharira is given. So the Yatana Sharira is such a Sharira, the body, that you cannot kill that. Just like suppose I'm breaking my hand, okay? Or, the hand will not break of Yatana. You will get the pain of breaking that.
Yes, Prabhu. I remember you telling, but then just forgot.
Like that. When suppose now we are frying the person in the boiling oil, the person will die, isn't it? But here the person doesn't die. You have to suffer. The person doesn't get burnt, but you have to suffer the burning. When you are getting burnt, how you suffer? That's pain will
The
be
same.
the same. So this
Uh,
is Yadana Sharira. Any other points? Any comments? Because I think only 10 minutes and now we'll. So next sloka will take next week. 5.
Yes, Prabhuji.
yes.
We'll stop here. Mancha kalpada rubbecha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo अनंत कोटि वैष्णव देखी जाए शिला प्रभुपाद की जय गुरु
जय।
महाराज की जय।
जय। हरि हरि।
Okay, so